Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the eCommerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Carrington CROTHERS from Prospect Street Studio. Welcome to the eCommerce Edge podcast. It's great to have you with me today.
Thank you, Jason. I'm excited to be here.
And we were talking off air that you are in the great city of Boston, and you said it's still a little bit chilly there. You definitely haven't broken into full spring yet, have you?
No, we're stuck in the fall spring world where one day it's nice and 70, and then the next day I wake up and it's 25, and I'm like, this is just such a tease.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Look, I got lots of friends that live on the East Coast, New York, Chicago, Boston, etc. But then I have other friends that are living in Miami, and it's like you're living in two different worlds as you get up into sort of more the New England area versus the further south you go, the warmer it seems to get.
Oh, yeah, one of my best friends lives in Florida. I'm just like, this is also a tease. Like, you're in paradise and it's 6 feet of snow outside.
Yeah. Oh, there's always trade-offs. No matter where you
Oh,
choose to live, there is always trade-offs, right?
definitely.
Okay. Listen, we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about all of your incredible work with great online and e-commerce brands. And you are a photographer and owner of Prospect Street Studio, where you say you turn businesses into brands. And so you're going to be a bit of a guest mentor for us today. But why don't you tell us how you got into this industry? How did you decide to? Because you've been a freelance photographer, you've worked inside studios before. You're a children's book author. The reality is you're a creative at heart and you do lots of creative things. But why photography and why in the brand building or e-commerce space?
Yeah, like you said, like I'm a creative at heart, but photography was something I fell into by accident when I was in college. I had an amazing professor who took me under his wing when I was just like, I would rather just pass my photography class, don't really care. And he was like, oh no, we're going to figure it out. And so he took me out for an hour to downtown Manchester, New Hampshire, taught me the ropes. I graduated. I went back to school for 2 more years to get a certificate in professional photography, and now I am here doing my own photography business. But yeah, I ended up, when I graduated, I started freelancing, and it was really just about learning what other photographers are doing, what I like, what I don't like, different industries. I knew I wanted to be somewhere in the product advertising space, but I quickly learned like fashion was not my thing. And I really liked the CPG space. And I worked for a handful of different companies. So I was very heavy when I started out in footwear. And then I eventually started what am I trying to say? Graduating. Nope, not the right word. Yes. Gravitating. That's where I'm going with that.
Gravitating.
Gravitate. All right. I started gravitating towards like food and beverage. And the people were amazing. I loved working with them. I like seeing the whole process of how you get the product from this idea to actually something that people can enjoy and eat. So I really just fell into that kind of a space, and those emerging brands where, all right, you've gotten your feet wet. Now you're getting a little traction. People might start actually recognizing the brand name. You're starting to go through a rebrand. You're like, let me take this a little bit more seriously. I'm not just at a farmer's market anymore. What do I need to be doing to be seen as a legitimate brand in the online space? So that's this area that I really fell into. And I enjoy helping brands just figure out, how do you make that transition and how do you do it visually?
And it's interesting because I have a very close New Zealander friend who now lives in Australia. He's been living there for I think close to 20 years now, and he's a professional photographer. And he started out doing wedding photography, as I think many photographers do. It's their bread and butter to get them started. Pretty quickly, within a few years, realized this is not gonna. Sure, I can make a living at this, but it's not gonna make me rich, and it certainly makes it difficult to build a business off the back of. And so he started working with very large companies. So he started working with car companies, and he started working with food companies. He started working with universities to do photography for their prospectuses, and he started to work, like, he moved almost exclusively into the corporate world because what he saw was that especially mid to large corporates, say $50 million and above kind of revenue businesses, they start to understand the power of creative, or perhaps maybe the term is better, they respect the power of creative maybe a little bit more than small businesses
Yep.
do, right? Where they go, cool, I can pick up my phone, I can pick up my iPhone, I can pick up my latest Android phone. I could take a pretty good picture, I could put a basic background up, I can get something decent out there that is gonna be good enough, right? And they treat photography as a good enough exercise, and that's it. Whereas the larger businesses, medium to large scale businesses, especially large enterprise businesses, they start to understand the power of visual narrative, and they understand the emotion that visual narrative can create and the power of visuals. And we've seen this with TV commercials since the beginning of time, is that the power of narrative told through visuals is, it does something to us, right? It lowers our threshold of treating something as an ad. It can cut through where maybe a textual message or something like that can very easily be sniffed out as an ad. Sometimes a visual will be so arresting that even if we know it's an ad, it's so creative, it's out of the box, that we go, wow, okay, cool. Maybe this wouldn't necessarily cause me to buy this thing, but it's interesting enough to stop the scroll, so to speak. And I feel like that's where, and especially in the age of AI, where I can create, even in Canva for the thumbnails for my podcast now, I just tell it what I want and it creates it dynamically for me. And it's good enough as a thumbnail because Canva knows all the key elements that a thumbnail has to have to arrest the scroll, etc. And they build those elements into the dynamic AI creative. And is that what you're seeing too? Is there is this divergence in the market between brands that maybe don't necessarily appreciate the value of creative as much. And so they're maybe relying on AI more than ever before. Whereas brands that understand visual storytelling, maybe they're leaning even more into human led creative.
Definitely. And there's a lot of brands that are starting with using AI or just using their iPhone. I'm like, all right, that's your starting point. But as you're going and growing, brands are hitting the point where they're like, oh, wait, people want to see the actual product. They don't just want a rendering that everything looks the same. And I try to tell brands, I'm like, when you do a rendering of a bag, they all, just because the color is different, because it's a different flavor, you can see the same wrinkle in every single one. Like, it feels carbon copy cloned. Where if you're shooting your actual product, it feels real. And that's where that disconnect is coming in, and people are like, oh, I want that to feel real. So they're going through the process, learning the AI, getting their feet wet. Once they start to grow a little bit, they're realizing that's not necessarily going to take me to the next level. And then guess what? We're redoing everything that the AI did. So it really depends on where the brand is at and what scale they're at.
It's interesting that you say that because I follow Curtis Matsko on LinkedIn. He's the founder of Portland Leather Goods, and he's pretty famous for leaning very heavily into real creative. And he's built his own photography studio. They're like a $500 million a year business or something like that. So they're a massive company. But it started in his garage, and he now has a full blown photo studio at their warehouse. They have a full blown photographic studio, and they've just built a full blown podcast studio at their warehouse because they want to own the creative process. They want to own the storytelling process internally. They want to have total creative control over how something looks but more importantly, feels.
Yep.
And if I was to look at, for example, even something as simple as your banner on LinkedIn, there's some really creative photos in there, and I could probably describe to AI, I could probably upload a base stock clear cut product photo of, say, that Hawaiian ginger or that whiskey or whatever the hell it is there. And I could probably tell AI, hey, put this on an orange background, do whatever. And I could probably get pretty close. But it's still, it's like the difference between listening to a podcast like this and going to a live event, right? It's the podcast is great. It's awesome. Love it. This is a conversation we can have thousands of miles away from each other, and great. I think there's a place for both. I think there's a place in the world for AI creative. I think there's a place in the world for recorded creative. I think there's a place in the world for live experiences. I think there's room in the world for all of these things, but I think that none of them are going to completely go away. Meaning that I think actually the more AI creative is in the world, the less people trust creative. Meaning that I think live concerts, for example, are and live sporting events and even live podcast recordings. Those are going to actually increase in value over time
Mhm.
as AI goes more mainstream than decrease in value over time. What is your sense?
For me, I keep hearing like the conversation of is it real? And when people start to question if something is real or not, that is a huge turnoff. And yeah, I do agree that I think there's a place for AI. There's going to be a place for legitimate creative. There's a place for all of these things. But it's when do you use it and when do you kind of leave that behind and go with another route that might be a little bit better for you and understanding like the pros and cons of each.
Yeah, it's interesting because now it's even become a meme. Like I notice on Instagram, and to be fair, I don't spend a ton of time on Instagram anyway, but I noticed that Instagram is being flooded with a ton of AI images, AI videos, AI narration, etc. And it's so funny. Humans can still mostly tell the difference. Like maybe in another 12, 24 months, that won't be true. But as of right now, like even memes in the comments, they'll put a meme up that says certified AI bullshit. And so it's interesting how we haven't quite passed the uncanny valley yet. Like it feels like AI generated stuff is still mostly, not always, but mostly detectable to us as humans because we go, there is something, okay, whether you're religious or not, maybe it's the soul. Maybe it's missing a soul. I don't know. I don't know quite what the terminology I would assign to this, but it feels like we as humans, or maybe heart, maybe use something more generic. Maybe it lacks heart. I don't know, but it just feels eyes, for example, are vacant in AI videos. There's just this sense that it's not real and there's something psychologically triggering about that is so incredibly off-putting unless it's a cartoon, it's clearly a cartoon, it's clearly some motion graphics or something like that where it's not trying to be real, then I think we're okay with that. But I think something fake pretending to be real, we have real issues with that as a
Yeah.
human being.
No, for sure. I definitely agree with that.
And how do you inject that heart into visual storytelling for brands, or how do you help do that for them?
So I don't really use any AI when it comes to any of the work that I am doing unless I'm like specifically asked for it. I have created like one or two different backgrounds, but other than that, we are primarily working with the brand to figure out like what is happening. Like I always tell them like if somebody goes to your website or your Amazon page and all the words are removed, what do we need to be showing them so they will still hit add to cart and understand what your brand is about and why in the world they should care about it. And that really changes the way somebody thinks about their website and their brand. It's like, how do I visually educate somebody and get them excited when they can't read about me? And it slows down the process to saying, this is not just another beverage brand anymore. Like, we need to slow down and look a lot deeper. And that's a fun kind of assignment that I will be doing with different brands that I have to say, you guys know your brand better than anyone. We start there, and then I start to come in and help figure out all the nuances to it.
Yeah, that's such an interesting exercise to go through. I think I probably need to go through that exercise myself, even on my own website as a service provider. I'm not selling a physical product, I'm selling a service. And man, that's so confronting
Mm,
just to say, what if we took all the words off the page and all you had was imagery to tell your story? How would you do that?
yep.
That's a pretty confronting exercise.
Oh, yeah. And every month I do these free calls with small brands where I will go through their websites and give them some feedback. And there's a lot of them where I'm like, okay, so imagine I have no clue who you are. There's no words here. What in the world are you selling? And they'll come back to me and say, you're right. I have no idea what I'm selling. And I'm like, if you don't know, how am I supposed to know?
And how are your potential customers supposed to know?
Exactly. And then we're going through that whole process of making it so people can understand exactly what's going on and why you should care about them.
Wow. And do some of them because obviously there's narrative creative, literally copywriting creative, etc. So that is an art form in its own. So I guess a lot of brands would potentially push back and say, no, the imagery and the copywriting have to go hand in hand, and we have to tell a narrative and we have to tell a story both through images as well as text. We have to have our content indexed by search engines, and they have a difficult time indexing images, although with AI that's getting better. In the age of I would think that textual narrative, that a lot of brands would assume that textual narrative now matters more than ever before because of AI, because we're now interacting with AI instead of a three term search query. Now we're actually having a conversation with AI. But I guess the good thing is, because AI turns everything into math, even images, it turns into vectorized math. Because of that, it feels imagery can, and it's so interesting because, and I've told this story on the podcast before, the when I started to get really impressed with AI is when I could upload images to it and ask it questions about the images
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, cool, I've uploaded an image of a motorcycle. What make, model, year is it? Is it standard? Is it customized? Whatever. When I was buying a dirt bike recently, I needed to upload a lot of dirt bike images to AI to ask them what year it was, because for some reason a lot of ads just didn't have the year of the motorcycle, and so I'd need to find out the bloody year of this thing. And AI was amazing at that. And yeah, I think textual narrative still important, but does the age of AI, at least from a answer engine perspective, does it make imagery even more powerful? Because in the age of just standard Google search, images didn't contribute as much to the story as maybe it does today.
Definitely. There's always going to be different parts to how the imagery is used, how the AI is reading it, and like you said, how the imagery and the copy can go hand in hand with each other. Everything needs to work together in synergy at the end of the day. So, it's not saying, oh, just because your imagery is on point that you're going to get the sale if your copy is terrible or you have other issues that are happening on the back end, right? So there's a lot of different areas where things do need to work together. And a good example is a client that I was working with, and they're not in the CPG space, but they basically sold a wall mount for massage guns. So you attach it to the wall and you can move the massage gun up and down depending on where you want to hit your back. And they had a really high return rate. And they ended up talking to me, and I was like, you have two big problems. One is your copy, one is your imagery. Everything was massage gun focused. It was massage gun wall mount. Everything was about the massage gun and the photos. And I'm like, we need this to be wall mount for massage guns. And all of your imagery needs to be focused on the wall mount, with the massage gun being secondary. So we're reversing your narrative. But those two things do need to work hand in hand together. Once we made all those changes, they stopped, their return rate drastically dropped because now people understood what they were purchasing. Where before, I was like, I guarantee you people are expecting that they're going to get like a $20 massage gun in the mail. And all of a sudden they got this whole
Wow.
other thing that you mount to the wall, and they're like, what in the world is this? So understanding how things go hand in hand does make a really big difference.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. And obviously it doesn't just help with returns. I think it imagery to me, like I won't buy any product. In fact, I'm trying to think if I've ever, and I shop online, every single week. I'm one of those weirdos that will prefer to shop online than I really don't like shopping in physical stores, and it's probably a dude thing mostly, but I just don't like going into stores. I would much prefer to do all of my shopping online if I could. I don't look at shopping as a sport
Yeah.
like some people do. Like they look at it as a full contact thing. Like they want to go in, they want to see it, they want to touch it, they want to hold it in their hand, they
Yep.
want to buy it. Me, I would prefer to buy it online because I just don't like the hassle, the time, driving there, everything else. And so I'm a convenience guy. But I'm trying to think if I've ever bought anything online that didn't have at least one photo for it. Maybe I have, but I don't think I have. I think most of the time, 99% of the time, a product has to have at least one image for me to believe that it's a real thing.
Yep.
Otherwise, it doesn't feel tangible, right?
Yeah, without the image, it's just words on a page, right? You could
Mhm.
have a sketch, you could have other ways of using creative if it's not a photo, but does that make it real? Does that tell somebody enough information about it?
And even simple things like fitment of a product, or even if it's a technical product, seeing how it might fit on my vehicle, or oftentimes it's not just pure aesthetics, it's fitment. It is seeing, does it work with the device that I'm putting this thing into?
Hmm.
I feel like there are there's so much more, even on industrial websites, for example. I think, because I work exclusively with B2B brands now. So they're manufacturers and they're distributors, and they're oftentimes working in like heavy industry
Yep.
space or something like that, where they're selling a steel support beam, or they're selling hoses or belts, or they're selling hardcore commercial industrial goods. But even then, they will almost always find that when they show a real product image as opposed to a generic product image. So let's say they have, I don't know, let's say they sell 50,000 different belts. If they show a generic belt image for every single belt versus the real image of the actual belt for that system, they find that their sales improve as they slowly work their way through their catalog and they take images of the actual thing. They find that the sales go up because they realize, okay, cool. Okay, a conveyor belt that is 12 inches wide is not the same as a ribbed V belt that's going to go on a John Deere tractor. They're just not the same. And so if you put a generic belt image up, people are less likely to trust that they're ordering the right thing, even if the name, even if the description, even if the table of specifications is right. They just seem to not trust it as
Right.
much.
It's also
And
the way you look through a screen. Like your brain's going to process the image first and then you're going to go through the copy. So if you don't trust the photo, you're already coming in at a negative. And now the copy has to win you back over, so to speak. And is it good enough to actually be able to do that?
yeah, even things like industrial pumps, I think even things that don't need an aesthetic quality to be a selling point, like the aesthetics is not the selling point. It's the functionality of the good that is the selling point. But I definitely do think that, especially in the B2B world, I think retail brands get this more than B2B brands. I think most retail brands, they understand that the more that they invest in creative, the better their brand will be perceived. They will not start with a deficit of trust. They will start with an abundance of trust. I think most retail brands understand this more than most B2B brands. Like, there are many B2B websites that you go to today, and first of all, many B2B brands don't even do e-commerce, which is a major problem to begin with. But secondarily, you go to B2B brand websites and they'll have zero images for any
Yeah.
products on the entire website. They might have a 5 million SKU catalog, and they will have zero images for any product in their entire catalog. And to me, it feels almost like B2Bs need to get religion about visual storytelling more than retail brands. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I would definitely agree. And if you think about how you were talking about manufacturing, there's so many manufacturing companies out there who have no photos on their website at all. Or if they do, they feel very like 90s, early 2000s, which is just not the same vibe that we have now. So there are companies out there who can still make it work without having imagery. But once you start to implement it, will you start to see more sales come through, like the belts? Will you start to see a bit difference in your business because people can trust you faster and they get a better understanding of what you're doing?
Yeah, and I think there is an opportunity to tell a story through imagery that is difficult to tell any other way. Sure, you can tell it through video. Yes, you can through text. Yes, you can tell it through diagrams, exploded drawings, etc. But there is a certain narrative quality of imagery that is, it's hard to replace it with anything else. And even if it's not necessarily just product images, if we can show through image visual storytelling the production process, maybe it's pictures of your factory, maybe it's pictures of the equipment you use to make the product, that shows the quality. And going back to Portland leather goods, oftentimes showing images of their factory, they're showing how clean. Like, I was blown away. I saw on one of Curtis's posts, he was in his office, which his office, the back office window in his office overlooks the factory, and it looks like a surgical clean room. It is wild how imagery can tell you could describe, hey, we produce our leather goods in a clean room like facility for ultimate product quality. Our pigments are first class. We pay top dollar for our raw materials, and it leads to a better end product. And we really care about how we make your products, and they're humans augmented with machines making these products, and there's pride in how we make it. But it's amazing how you can say all that, but one picture of one warehouse facility or one manufacturing facility can convey that more powerfully than an entire page worth of text.
Oh, 100%. Especially when you have a huge facility and you can show the vastness of it, how clean it is. You can show your employees working on like the actual products people are receiving. Like, people love seeing how it's made. There's a whole TV show called How It's Made, for God's sake. It's not just about the product. It's people love to know and get into that kind of nitty-gritty about the whole process. And figuring out there's other ways to also be just educating your customers on what you're doing as a brand.
Yeah, and you look at some of the most popular both profiles as well as imagery on even on Instagram, it is BTS. Like one of the top on Instagram is BTS behind the scenes.
Yep.
It might be a model at a photo shoot, but then you'll have somebody behind the camera taking a photo of the photographer shooting the model and saying, "Oh, here's a little behind the scenes of my photo shoot today," or
Yep.
whatever it is. So that visual storytelling element, many brands, they have a hard time telling their story verbally. They have a hard time articulating what makes their brand special. And what is it? A picture's worth 1,000 words. I think that's a truism that still is true today. And do you get, when you're doing photography, do you prefer to do that on site with your clients, or do you prefer to have them like send you the products and then you do it in your studio? Does it help you understand their story better when you go to their offices, their production facilities, their showroom, their retail store, whatever it might be? What do you find works best for you to capture their brand vibe through visuals?
So whether it's a virtual or an in-person shoot, it honestly doesn't make a difference to me. If somebody's virtual and they're shipping me the product, I do everything over Zoom anyway. So they're still going to see it. They just can't physically touch what I'm doing. When somebody comes into the studio and they want to be part of it, they can just go over to the set, and if they want to make adjustments, they can. I'm not going to get mad. Unless there's a point where I'm like, don't touch anything. We have to figure something out right now. And then, other than that, I like when my clients can be engaged and have fun with it at the same time. But if they are on the West Coast, that's also fine. I've had clients literally, like when I screen shared, they just drew on the screen, and we were doing a subscription box with a bunch of items in it. And we were super close to the final shot, and he just moved this here. And he made little arrows all over the screen, and I literally just moved and copied. It was perfect. So he was able to still have enough control over what was happening, even though he wasn't standing with me. And I can still execute exactly what he was looking for. So it just depends on how you go about it, whether it's virtual or in person. When it is manufacturing, you have to be in person. There's no other option. I'm not going to be able to hold my camera and also be on a lift and doing an aerial photo. Like, I got to be there. So, when it comes to that, being on site is definitely a bit more important.
And what is your feeling about Photoshop and the retouching, the editing, do you put Photoshop in the same bucket as AI? Do you see that there's a difference because Photoshop has a lot of AI tooling in it now? So how do you reconcile the raw creative talent of somebody like yourself and the raw creative output that you saw in your mind's eye and you captured that through a lens? How do you reconcile that with, do you use Photoshop? Do you think it's valuable? Do you think it's useful? Do you think it's shit? Like, how do you reconcile software combined with human creative?
I use Photoshop. I know there is AI within it, but I do think there's a difference, and especially like the way that Photoshop uses it. So if I wanted to go into Photoshop and remove dust off of a product, I can do that, and I'm not changing the physical product. If I put that photo into AI and said, remove the dust and send it back to me, there's a very good chance that product looks completely different, or they've changed the text, or it'll never send me back exactly my photo. So it's just not there yet with that technology, where for Photoshop, you do have more control over what that final output is without damaging the creativity that you've already put into your photo.
Without removing the essence
Yeah.
of the photo, I guess, is the key. And when you first start working with the brand, is it usually that they're already ready for someone like you, or is there an educational process that you usually have to go through with the brand for them to understand your value, to recognize your value, to understand the value of your creativity, your vision? Is it usually that they have already come to that conclusion themselves and that's why they've reached out to you? Or is it a case of sometimes needing to take them on a journey?
I think it depends on the size of the brand itself. Larger brands are just like, awesome, great, go for it. We trust you. Here's our mood board, go execute. Smaller brands need a lot more hand holding. They need the education, they need to be walked through everything. And there's no right or wrong, it's just an experience level. And I don't mind either way. If you need a little more hand holding, I will walk you through the process. If you say, Carrington, go have creative freedom and have fun, that is totally fine with me too.
Let's talk about brand guidelines for a second, because I worked in building agencies for many years, e-commerce agencies, and oftentimes when our creative team would come in and they would do creative discovery with a client before they started to actually design the web
Mhm.
experience or the UX, UI, and UX, they would ask for brand guidelines, whatever the brand might have. And oftentimes they would either have nothing, or if they had brand guidelines, it would be things like fonts, it would be things like colors, it would be things like logos, it would be might be a one paragraph description of the brand, the tone, the voice, but very rarely did we get some specific brand photography that captured the essence of the brand so that we could understand visually how they tell story, how they want to be represented on screen. And so, do you help brands create visual brand guidelines as part of your work, or creative brand guidelines other than fonts and maybe a logo?
Sort of, but I wouldn't say directly that I'm going to be creating
Okay.
that portion of the brand guide. Can I do it? Sure. Is it an ask? Very rarely. I will walk brands through, hey, these are the images we have. This is how you're going to implement them on your Amazon site. This is how you'll implement them like on your Shopify site, wherever you are. And I will give them that kind of guidance to say, okay, your ecom images go first on white. Then you get into the lifestyle. After that, you're going to get in the video and we'll kind of walk them through it. But I wouldn't say that I'm making their legit guidelines, but I am
Mhm.
providing them a rough kind of walkthrough if they need it. But not all brands will. It's like I said earlier, depends on how much hand holding they need.
And what are the biggest problems or the typical issues you run into when you first start working with a brand? What are the standout consistent things you say, here's one, two, three things that I just consistently bump into over and over again, that if clients either prepared themselves better before they came to you, or what kind of pre-work can a brand do before they hire a creative like you to make the experience better for them and for you?
Again, it also depends, going back to the size of the brand and how well they know what their needs are. A larger brand, they're just going to tell me, this is what we need, this is what we want, this is how we've done it in the past. A smaller brand, I am going to be helping them figure out that whole process. And sometimes they come to me and they're like, this is the style we want, this is how we're going to execute. Other times I'm saying, I want to see a mood board of likes and dislikes. Go through a couple of these other brands. I want to know what parts of them you like, what do you not like, because oftentimes what you don't like is more important than what you do like when it comes to an overall vibe, because we're getting rid of all of the things that I should not be doing. And then we can really narrow down on what is actually important for your brand. Are you bright and airy? Are you dark and moody? Are you got a poppy color going on? There's so many different ways you can go about it. So how do we want to figure that out? And there was a brand that I worked with, and they told me very clearly they wanted the photo to be close up and a blurred background of a kitchen. We were doing it, and they just were like, nope, we don't like it, we don't like it, we don't like it. And I hit a point where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give them the polar opposite. I opened up, I showed the whole kitchen in focus with the product on the counter, and they loved it. That was a situation where they just didn't also know how to explain what they wanted. And I hit a point where I'm like, we are just going to start experimenting to figure out what is actually going to resonate with you in this moment.
Wow, wow. And how do you like brands go through evolutions. They
Yeah.
have to. They have to evolve over time. They have to change over time. They have to rebrand occasionally. But sometimes it's a light rebrand. Sometimes it's a major rebrand where they pivot the products they carry. They pivot their logo. They pivot their name.
Mm-hmm.
They pivot every piece of creative associated with their brand. And there's a spectrum, right? With rebrands, there's a spectrum of brand evolution over time. And how does visual storytelling help link a brand over time so that the core essence of what made that brand great doesn't get lost in those transitions?
That's an interesting question because if you think about some brands, like their logo from 30 years ago could be completely different. But it also depends on what the market is also asking for. Are they the same brand they were 15, 20 years ago? Or are they completely different? Have they hit a new market? Have they gone through a rebrand for a reason? Instead of saying, hey, we want to target 50 to 60-year-old women and now we're targeting 20 to 30, okay, that's a really big change, right? Your marketing's not going to be the same. The visuals aren't going to be the same. So, what are the reasons behind it? And does it make sense for the brand?
Yeah, no question about it. And if you could snap your fingers and change one thing about the e-commerce space in general, sprinkle your particular brand of fairy dust on it, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough question. My little bit of fairy dust. There's one big thing that drives me a little bit crazy is getting brands to understand that when you come to somebody's Instagram page and then go to their Amazon page and then go to their Shopify site, your brand has to look the same. If I go to Instagram and then go to your website and it's not immediately apparent this is the same brand, we have a problem. And I talk to brands, smaller brands, mostly about this all the time, where I'm like, you need a cohesive brand identity across all of the platforms that you are selling on. And if I could make that one switch for brands, I definitely would because it would make things far more clear.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And what's next for you? Are you changing the way that you work, your processes? Are customers asking for more AI capabilities from your side to make you more efficient? Like how are you starting to weave AI into your workflows?
Very minimally. Most brands that I'm talking to, I am replacing the AI of so AI is not something that I'm using on a daily in my business. If I need it, it is there. But for the most part, it is a very minimal ask that I am not coming across that much, which is surprising to a lot of people because everyone just go use AI, just chat GPT it. And it's just not something that is becoming a bigger conversation yet for me.
Amazing, amazing. And I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile and your website in the show notes. But if people want to get a hold of you and chat all things visual storytelling with you, what's the best way to find you?
They can find me at prospectstreetstudio.com. I think I'm probably only Carrington CROTHERS on LinkedIn if they need to find me there as well. Or they can just email me at info@prospectstreetstudio.com.
Incredible. Listen, Carrington, this has been as somebody who's admittedly not a creative in the traditional sense. I'm not a great photographer. I don't paint. I my art is storytelling, my art is writing, and my art is speaking. I love speaking in public, I love speaking in large groups, I love speaking at conferences, and I love writing, and I get to do both almost every single day as part of my day job, as part of a podcast, everything else. So that's my art, but I'm not a traditional artist. So I always love speaking with more traditionally artistic people, whether it's they're musically creative or visually creative or whatever it is. So more traditional creatives in the way that they think. It's such a unique gift. My wife is an interior designer by trade and training. And so she's more traditionally creative than I am. And as a result of that, I find that more traditional creatives see beauty in the world where people like me do not.
Mm-hmm.
So when my wife and I love to travel the world, and almost everywhere we go, she will call out beautiful things in the world that I like. I don't see it, doesn't even register with me. She'll be like, "Oh, look at that thing over there." And it's like this beautiful little, it could be something super simple. It could be a flower, it could be almost anything. And she will see beauty in the world that just, I don't know, like people who are not natural creatives, I think it's harder for us to stop and smell the roses. Maybe that's the thing. And I think true creatives, they appreciate beauty in the world maybe more than the rest of us. And so always respect people with creative talent like yours, because I think we need more beauty in the world, not less. And so if we can put beautiful things in the world, then that's going to make the world a better place for everybody and maybe make it a little bit more joyful despite everything that's going on in the world. So I really appreciate your time. I super appreciate the conversation. It was super educational for me, and I'm sure it will be for my audience too. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question. You could be personal or professional. So Carrington Crothers of Prospect Street Studios, what is your question for me today?
I'm going to reverse yours. If you could put your little sprinkle of fairy dust onto one part of the e-commerce world, what would it be?
I think that specifically because I work with B2Bs, and I think B2Bs are stuck about, not all, and I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but most B2Bs, still the lion's share, are stuck in a decade old mindset. And so they many times have not recognized that the buying cohort has changed, meaning that the over 70% of B2B buyers today in the United States are millennials and Gen Z. They're not old folks. They're not people that have been in the industry for 50 years anymore. They're diverse. There's more females. There's more minorities. There's the buying demographic is now more diverse. Like the professional procurement specialists in the B2B world, it is now more diverse than it has ever been. And on the sell side, it's not much more diverse than it's ever been. And so as a result of that, the sell side, the supply side of B2B still treats the market in exactly the same way, largely again, as it always has. So that physical selling, that sales rep rocking up, knocking on your door, that sales rep physically going to a trade show and trying to sell to you from a booth, that physical selling model, which will never fully go away in B2B. Belly to belly selling will never go away, and I don't want it to. But I think most B2Bs are afraid and feel very threatened by digital technology and e-commerce, when in actuality, it's just going to give them superpowers, and it's going to give sales reps superpowers, and it's going to take away the pain of a lot of admin functions that salespeople do today they don't like doing anyway. And I just think that uh, if they thought mobile was disruptive, AI is going to rewrite how business gets done in the B2B world through agentic procurement. And that is happening at a very fast pace. And I am genuinely concerned for a lot of legacy family owned, because most of the B2Bs that I work with, they're like second, third generation family owned businesses that have been around for like 80 to 100
Mm-hmm.
years. And so if they don't figure this out, if they don't embrace, not just tolerate, but embrace digital selling channels and digital enablement for their sales reps and their customers, they are just going to become irrelevant. They're just going to, because most buyers today, they want to buy, they want to do all their own research. They want to educate themselves before they ever make a purchase. They want to shortlist suppliers. They want to do all that stuff. And they want to self-service all of that. They're not waiting for you to come and knock on their door anymore. That's not the way things work. And in B2B, it was, most sales were based on long-term relationships. Okay, I got a sales rep and I got a buyer, and they have worked together for 30 years. Those long-term relationships don't guarantee you a sale anymore,
Right.
because now they're educating themselves. The buyer's educating themselves. They're looking for good deals. They're looking for the best suppliers. They're looking for who can supply the fastest, who has stuff in stock. They're doing so much more education before they do their procurement exercise, that they're doing their job. They're doing procurement as a job, right? They're not doing it for pleasure. They're not doing it for joy. They're not doing it for inspiration and aspiration. They're doing it as part of their day job. So any supplier that can help them do that more efficiently saves the company doing the procurement, saves money. They're more efficient. And so I think that The whole world has had to evolve in the light of digital and AI, but B2B has more catching up to do than retail because retail has always been at the cutting edge of customer experience. And so something like 98% of retailers today offer e-commerce. Like it's very rare. If you are a startup retail brand today, it would be absolutely unheard of for you not to offer e-commerce.
Mhm.
But there's still, depending on the vertical, like 40 to 60% of B2B suppliers in the United States still don't offer e-commerce. And that is wild to me. It's absolutely wild to me. So that would be the thing that I would change, is to remove the fear away from the market
Mhm.
and help them, encourage them that, look, you can still be amazing at what you do. You can still differentiate. You can still bring the essence of what makes you amazing as a business and has made you amazing for the last 100 years. You can still bring that into digital channels. It's all about how do we translate that into a digital services layer that represents the essence of who you are digitally, and that would be the thing that I would change.
Fair enough.
Well, listen, fabulous chat. Really appreciate your time. Wish you every success with your studio, and I can't wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you so
We'll
much.
definitely do this again in the future. Thank you, Jason.
If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.